Alright guys, in today's video we have some more PlayStation related information to go over and discuss here. There are three different things I want to take some time here to talk about. The first and probably most interesting has to do with a new rumor that has popped up from an individual who is a known insider apparently, and they are claiming that Sony is working on a new horror themed IP, which sounds incredibly exciting if it's true. I want to talk about why I think this could be true and how there are maybe a few hints that we've already seen that Kojima Productions could in fact be the studio behind this new horror themed IP, and how it seems maybe possible that Sony has already acquired Kojima Productions as a first party studio, and we are going to be learning about all of these things relatively soon. So that's the first thing we're going to discuss. We are also going to be talking about a new patent that has been discovered that reveals some more of the PlayStation 5 controller, the Dualshock 5's capabilities, and we are also going to be discussing PlayStation VR 2.0 and how there is a VR publisher that is claiming Sony will be launching the new headset alongside the PS5. So if you think you're going to enjoy the video or find it informative, or if you just enjoy the content in general, be sure to hit the like button. It really helps the videos out more than you know. It's the easiest way for you guys to let me know you enjoy the content. And if you're new here and haven't already, also hit the subscribe button. But starting here, says Sony Interactive Entertainment is reportedly working on a new horror-themed IP. According to known industry insider Emery Kaya, hopefully I'm pronouncing their name correctly, no details are currently available as to what the game will actually turn out like, but more horror titles can only be a good thing as far as we are concerned. Still, wouldn't it be nice if we got a return to the Siren franchise? Blood Curse was brilliant after all, and so this is what the tweet actually said. I know I don't normally post about gaming stuff except Batman related things, but I have learned that Sony is currently working on a new horror IP. Interesting, ... So the reason why I'm thinking that if this is in fact true and this person can be believed, which I don't know if they can, honestly, this is the first time I'm hearing of this individual, but apparently they are a known insider. It's just that they don't apparently talk about many gaming related things if it doesn't have to do with Batman. The reason why I am inclined to believe this is because not too long ago we talked about Hideo Kojima getting ready to begin work on his next project because he just apparently doesn't want to take any time off. He loves creating games, and so right after Death Stranding shipped, he probably took, a little short vacation, but then immediately got into work mode and the conceptualizing stages of what he wants to do next. In fact, I would argue that he probably already knew before Death Stranding was finished what he wanted to do next. And he took to Twitter and he put out this tweet, and he says, "As to make the scariest horror game, I'll watch the scary movies in order to awaken my horror soul. The Eye is the Thai horror movie I rent when making PT, but was too scary to finish watching. The package is scary, so I rented the disc only. Will I be able to finish watching?" And so this is him hinting, heavily hinting, and I don't think this is the only hint actually that he's given, that he wants to work on another horror-themed IP. And he must know how excited people were, obviously, for PT, and we know everything that happened there. We're not going to rehash that here. But it would just make a lot of sense, in my opinion, for Kojima to want to do something like this, because the potential that was there with PT, obviously we all saw it, and Kojima himself, as the creator, knows that there was something more he wanted to do with that. There was a lot more him and his team wanted to do, and it was just never realized. So it would make a lot of sense, in my opinion, for the next thing he wants to do to say, you know what, I want to go back to this, and I want to fully realize that horror vision that he had, that he wanted to implement into a game like PT. And I think, frankly, people would be through the roof excited for that. I know I would. I'm a big fan of horror games. There aren't that many like AAA horror titles, and so I think it would make sense for Kojima to do that. Talking about why I believe this would, if this is in fact what's happening, if Sony is deciding to develop a new horror-themed IP, and it is in fact Hideo Kojima who is going to be behind it, I think it would make a lot of sense if we find out that Sony ended up acquiring Kojima Productions. I don't mean to continually bring up all of the rumors and the leaks and whatnot, but there are some individuals that we've talked about that have been heavily hinting or just straight up making it sound as though Sony has already acquired another major or big first-party studio, and that an announcement of it is imminent, and it's going to be a big deal, and people are going to be very excited. So there were a lot of different studios that come to mind, but if you start to think about this, right, we hear about rumors of a new studio being acquired. We don't know which one, but we do know it's going to be pretty significant. And then not too long after, we're hearing a rumor that apparently Sony is greenlighting a new horror-themed IP. And then you also look at the fact that Kojima has pretty much made it clear through his Twitter and through interviews that he would like to do another horror-themed game. Maybe there's a chance we could see the big announcement that Kojima Productions is now a first-party studio under Sony, and that there is a new horror-themed game that Kojima Productions is going to be working on. That would be an incredible excitement. Maybe that's wishful thinking on my part. I know I'm jumping to a lot of conclusions here, but these are the, this is just me, I guess you could say, trying to connect the dots based off of everything we're hearing and seeing. We don't even know if this rumor is true. We don't even know if it's true that Sony is greenlighting a new horror-themed IP, but it would make sense in order for them to kind of diversify a little bit, you know what I mean? And I think that's something a lot of people have been asking for quite some time. So we're going to have to wait to see if anything comes of that. If anything does come of it, if there are any announcements relating to this to prove that it is in fact a real thing that is going to be announced and revealed, it's most likely going to be revealed during the upcoming PlayStation 5 event. That would make the most sense, but we do have to understand this is a rumor, and we don't know if any of this is true, but it is still very exciting nonetheless. So moving on from that, discussing this new patent that talks about the Dualshock 5's features and capabilities in regards to its haptic feedback triggers. It says here the patent in question, filed recently and by a Sony Japan studio, specifically makes note of new climbing mechanics. More or less, it notes that each trigger can represent a character's hand. With this, players can tilt the gamepad towards whatever climbing point they want to grab and use the triggers to independently grab with the character's left or right hand. Meanwhile, if you pull too lightly, your character's grip will be lighter, and as a result, they could lose grip and fall. However, if you pull too hard, you may damage or break what you're trying to grab at. And of course, to let players know whether they are grabbing too light or too hard, the controller can vibrate or the game can give visual cues. Meanwhile, the other new mechanic the patent mentions is a cutting mechanic. So say players are holding a chainsaw, the controller's vibration and audio will reflect that the saw is not cutting anything. However, once cutting objects, you'll feel not only the material of what you're cutting via the haptic feedback, but through the triggers. For example, if you're cutting through something thick or harder, you'll get more resistance in the triggers. Meanwhile, if you're cutting through butter, you won't feel a thing. Basically, you'll be getting increased feedback, which should go a long way for certain games like racing titles, or even something like Star Wars, where you're cutting through everything via a lightsaber. Of course, none of this is game-changing, but it gives you an idea of how some of the DualShock 5's more minor features can change the moment-to-moment gameplay experience. So I thought this was worth bringing up here because it does sound pretty cool, and it is something that I hope that many developers choose to implement with their games. Unfortunately, though, this does kind of come off to me as one of these situations where we're going to see Sony's first-party studios do some really cool stuff with these features that the DualShock 5 is going to offer, but when it comes to third-party developers, we may only see a handful of them actually try to go above and beyond and utilize this. It's really going to be something that we're going to have to wait and see, but nonetheless, it does sound really cool to me, and I am actually going to be interested to see how developers can implement this type of stuff into their games, because based off of everything we've heard so far, maybe it's just people trying to overhype it, but it sounds like these haptic feedback triggers are actually, if they're used right and they're implemented properly, can make a big difference in the way you experience certain things that you do in video games. So hopefully we see more developers choose to use it and implement it than not, but we will have to wait and see about that. Now, finally, moving on from that, we're going to be talking about this PlayStation VR rumor that apparently comes from a VR publisher called Immersive VR Education, where they apparently claim that they are going to be releasing some type of software on the next version of PlayStation VR this year when it launches alongside the PS5. Says, according to VR Focus, Immersive VR Education recently shared a trading update concerning the end of 2019. In addition to detailing its projections for 2020, the publisher directly referenced an updated version of Sony's VR device. The brief mention is as follows. 2020 will see Sony release the PlayStation 5 and a new version of the PlayStation VR headset, PSvr, which will further expand the high-end VR user base. The group intends to support this device with its current suite of showcase software. Interestingly, this does not align with what Sony executives have said previously. During last year's Collision Toronto conference, Sony's global head of R&D for PlayStation, Dominic Mallinson, hopefully I'm saying that correctly, noted that launching PS5 and PSVR's successor simultaneously would be a mistake. The last thing the company wants is to make consumers feel bombarded with new hardware. In some ways, it's good to have a little breathing space between those things, he explained at the time. So, yeah, I wanted to mention this because there are some people that are looking at this and thinking that this is maybe some type of low-key confirmation that PSVR will be launching alongside the PlayStation 5, like the next version of it. However, we do have to pay attention to what this article highlighted here at the end, where regardless of what this company is saying, I guess they are under the impression that Sony is going to be launching a new PlayStation VR headset later this year, at the end of this year. But we have to look at what Sony themselves are saying here. They're saying that they don't want to do this because they don't want to risk bombarding the consumer or confusing them or overwhelming them. And I have to agree with Sony. I think that's actually a really smart thing. There's no reason to put both of these products out there at the same time. I think it would just be best if they hold off on PSVR, maybe save it for a year later, maybe even 2 years later. I mean, the longer they wait, the better it will end up being, the cheaper it will be to produce, and the better tech they can actually, they can put even better tech in the headset itself to make it an even bigger jump from what PSVR 1 is. So I don't think this is something you should really look into too much. It's not a rumor, I believe. I just think this company may be a little bit confused, but maybe they know something we don't. We are going to have to wait to see. Sony has been virtually silent, so anything is possible, but I would not anticipate PlayStation VR launching alongside the PS5. I mean, this is one area where Sony has not been very silent, and they have pretty much confirmed it's not happening. So be sure to let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. That does it for the video. Leave it a like if you did enjoy it. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and haven't already. Hit the bell notification icon so you never miss an upload, and feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.